I'm TerryDavidMulligan. This is the Mulligan Stew podcast. But just a heads up that next week we're going to go back and repeat episode 157 when Bob Dylan turned 80 in May of 2021, I think it was, with comments by David Bowie, Susan Tedeschi and Derek Trucks, Robbie Robertson, Colin Linden, the Avett Brothers, Barney Bentall and Steve Dawson, and Greg Keeler from Blue Rodeo. That's next week. Now, this week, we're backstage at the Vancouver Island Music Festival in Courtney, Comox, as arranged by and allowed by Doug Cox, the artistic director, who we've already talked to previously. And the four artists that we're going to bring you insight on today are Holger Peterson, the host of Natural Blues on CKUA, and a man in multiple halls of fame. He's been covering this particular festival for, I think he said 13, 14 years. And then we'll switch to a news story that's just breaking. It's the brothers Landreth and their newfound fame, David and Joey Landreth from Winnipeg, which is where they were playing in 2014 at the Folk Festival when Bonnie Raitt heard their songs on stage and asked if they would send songs to her. It took almost 7 years to get those songs to Bonnie. She recorded Made Up Mind. It was a lead-off single from her album, her Grammy-winning album, Just Like That. And all of a sudden, just like that, the Landreth boys are sought all over the world. As a matter of fact, they'll tell you a story about heading for the Byron Bay Blues Festival this year and all that went right and all that went wrong. We're also going to talk to Rock and Roy Forbes, also a host on CKUA, Roy's Record Room, every Sunday, and an artist, a singer-songwriter, singular. You know it's him when he sings. And he's going to talk about his album Thistles, which was recorded many years ago. And we're going to finish with AV and the Inner City and Vriend and a great gospel choir with her. Here we go. The Mulligan Stew podcast right here, right now. Wow. I have just enough battery for one more interview with Holger Peterson from Natural Blues. Holger, you've been coming here as long as I can remember.
I was trying to figure that out. I think it's about 15 or 16 years at this point that I've been coming every year to Vancouver Island Music Fest and absolutely love it here. We love coming here. We get treated so well. You can't beat the atmosphere of British Columbia and Vancouver Islands and being on the coast.
Are you maybe a secret islander? Could you see yourself?
No, not really, but I like to spend more time here, off and on.
And what brought you the first time, 16, 17 years ago?
Doug Cox. Doug used to be at the Edmonton Folk Festival before he came out here, moved out here, and started and advanced his musical career. Doug and I have been very close over the years, and when I saw that what he was doing and got the invite, of course, I'd love to be here.
You just did an hour and a bit session with Roy on a stage
yes.
in behind you. What were your expectations going in? Did you do your homework?
Absolutely, yeah. Roy Forbes did an album called Thistles, and it's just celebrated its 40th anniversary this year. And Doug Cox asked Roy to recreate the album and do it live at the festival here and zero in on the tunes, relearn all the tunes, because Doug figured it's a classic Canadian folk recording, singer-songwriter recording. And then asked me if I would do the interview with Roy talking about, the making of Thistles start to finish and about Roy's career. So I was delighted to do that because, as you know, we both love Roy.
Yeah.
And he's CKUA. He's royalty to us. He's done such great work.
I hear he has a show on Sunday.
1 o'clock.
The Room. All right, so now, here's one of the best parts and one of the trickiest parts. Half a dozen memories from those 16 years that will not leave you to this day.
Sure. I would say you're wearing a backstage pass autographed by Bobby Rush. Bobby Rush's solo performance on a small stage where he played harmonica, played a little acoustic guitar, was just masterful, absolutely masterful. That will always remain one of my memories. When you see one person being able to control and work a crowd and the dynamics and everything. I would say Little Feat's concert here was an absolute highlight, and it was a very emotional concert, because their drummer had cancer and had retired to the Comox Valley and was making one final appearance with Little Feat. They had replaced him, but invited him, and they had a special concert here right at this festival where they could bring him on and do a couple of songs. And it ended up that he ended up doing about a half hour with the band, and it was his last appearance. That was really emotional. There are many, many others. Doug Cox and I produced an album called Guitar Heroes that was recorded live with 4 guitar heroes that Doug put together, and that was James Burton, thank you very much, Elvis's guitar player, and Graham Parsons, and just so many other people, Emmylou Harris, and it was James Burton, Albert Lee, Amos Garrett, and David Wilcox, all Telecaster players primarily, on stage together, trading licks, and all with big smiles on their faces. Luckily, it was recorded, and it was recorded to the extent that it sounded like a good record, and so we put it out, and that was a kind of a highlight for me. Bonnie Raitt with Colin James on guitar, sitting in on guitar, that was a highlight. Mavis Staples was one of the first shows that I went to see here. Always a highlight. Mavis Staples, you can't beat that.
Couple of years ago, Ry Cooder and his son.
Oh, and that Ry Cooder show here was fantastic with Joaquin, and that was so special to see that particular performance. Yeah.
One singular voice, one singular moment. Who are we forgetting? One more.
Okay. Emmylou Harris.
Yes.
Yeah, that was a great show. That was only a few years ago.
Okay.
Did you know Doug Somm played here?
Yes. Yes. Man. Now, here's the thing. How many interviews are you doing, and where will they show themselves in your empire?
Yeah. Well, I did the one with Roy Forbes, as you mentioned today. I just did one with Blue and Gold, the Blue and Gold, which is basic Ndidi Unukulu, or NDDO, and Trish Klein, who was with Poor Girl, and also Be Good Tanya's. Yeah. So they have a duo now, and they do traditional women's blues from the 20s, 30s, and 40s, and they do it so well. And I just did an interview with them, and I love that record. I'm looking forward to that. Tomorrow, Dave Alvin and Jimmy Dale Gilmore together. That's going to be a lot of fun. Two people who, for my musical taste, really changed my appreciation. I thought the Blasters were one of the great rock bands of all time, with blues roots. And Jimmy Dale, representing Lubbock, Texas, thank you very much, the home of Buddy Holly and Waylon Jennings and the Crickets and a whole bunch of other wonderful people. Both Dave Alvin and Jimmy Dale Gilmore have really strong roots in their community, and roots that show up in their music, topics that show up in their songwriting, and I love that, connection.
Get home safely, and I'll see you in Edmonton, hopefully.
I look forward to that. Thank you, Terry. Appreciate it.
Holger Peterson, backstage at the Vancouver Island Music Festival. Holger Peterson, the host and producer of Natural Blues, I believe the longest-running show on CKUA. Saturday afternoon, 3 to 5. And a bluesologist in the Blues Hall of Fame. He's won so many awards. The man who helped to found Stony Plain Records and gave a home for blues musicians in music. When no one else would give them a chance, Holger opened the door and said, come on, make some music. All right, speaking of blues, he said, segueing into the Brothers Landreth. It was 2014. They were in Winnipeg, their hometown, at the Winnipeg Folk Festival. And listening to their songs was Bonnie Raitt, who was the headliner. And she liked them so much that she had her management get a hold of the brothers and say, I like your songs. If you have a song you think I would be interested in that I could sing, please send it along. And in telling the tale to us, last year before, the brothers said we couldn't find a song that we thought that she would like until they sent her Made Up Mind. And then they forgot about it and got on with their career. And a number of years passed until they got word that Bonnie was recording and that she wanted to sound like Joey Landreth because they were recording a Brothers Landreth song, Made Up Mind. It ended up being the first single of her Grammy-winning album, Just Like That. And their lives have been turned upside down. So we're going to have this conversation with the Brothers Landreth post-Grammys. For the first time since 2014, they're actually sharing a stage with Bonnie Raitt at the Byron Bay Blues Festival in Australia. Here we go. This is really cool, gentlemen. I have on a couch, we've got to take a shot of this, so just people, we're in some sort of mystic tent with lit grapes, and it looks like a wizard's place. It's like, this is the kind of place you should have done your happy dance in, like this. Yeah. Jump, you should have it. I have the Landreth brothers with me, the Brothers Landreth. When's the last time that you actually had freedom to sit around and read a book?
It's been a minute. Although, I mean, the pandemic was a good time for reflection. I mean, I think everybody's sort of COVID experience was different. But I'm not much of a reader. I like to joke that I can't read. I just like to say things like, sure, it would be great if I could read, things like that. But yeah, I mean, we had some pretty good chill time, like 2020, 2021. It's also when we made our record, and yeah.
Book?
You know what? My kid just started sleeping through the night for the first time in 3 years.
So you're sleeping?
Now I'm sleeping. I'm a whole new man. The first 3 years of that were complete and utter chaos.
It's a living hell.
It was insanity. It was the best of times. It was the worst of times. But a kid that suddenly sleeps right about... We got home from this last tour through the States at the beginning of June, and that kind of clocked the moment that he started sleeping consistently, and I swear to God, I'm just a whole new person now. So I actually have had a little bit of time, not much, I mean a few pages here and there, but I am, finally having a little bit of time back.
So then it begs the question, wouldn't that be a great source of songs? Just reading books and see, but so where are you pulling, where's the go-to delight that you find where a song may spring from it, other than life itself?
Yeah, you know what? I think I've been discovering in this last year that for me the sort of the spring, the natural spring of sort of creativity for writing songs, it's sort of like the incubator is boredom, and there hasn't been much of that in the last little while. Like between touring, making a record, and growing our family, there's very few moments of boredom. So we're kind of trying to figure out how to carve some of that time. So there haven't been a lot of songs. There have been 0 songs. But
so what's down the road then? Where do we? Because there'll be a giant light bulb over your head that's just been turned on, saying, "More, please."
Well,
yeah, that light bulb is starting to flicker on right now,
and it's not a light bulb; it's our manager
cracking some sort of whip.
Cracking a whip. And for us, like, we've never been prolific writers, and we've always written records kind of under the pressure of having to deliver another album. And it's not to say that it isn't a sacred art form or anything. It's just not something that we go to easily and regularly. I think we really like to focus on making the records and developing the live show and being a band and playing. We love to play on stage. It's a big part of who we are. So the songwriting process almost always comes under the wire a little bit.
It's a deadline.
Often, but I don't want that to like cheapen the experience.
No. Let me share that.
Yeah.
I'm going to put you on status here. I asked Randy Newman how he wrote his songs. He said deadline. They give me a deadline, and I wait until the last possible moment, and then it all comes out.
Yeah.
Yep. It's the Randy Newman principle.
Yeah.
If that works for Randy, I suddenly feel that actually makes me feel so much better.
What I meant to say and all that is actually we subscribe to the Randy Newman School of Songwriting, which I think is also nicknamed the oh shit.
That's right.
make a record school of
that
songwriting.
Is fantastic. I can't tell you, I actually feel so much better about that. If we're in the same class as Randy Newman...
Well, I don't know that we're in the same class, but it seems like we're the same kind of procrastinators.
We struggle with the same kind of... Then I feel so much better.
Yeah.
Because I always... Like, we're surrounded by... In our little sphere of artists, especially Manitoba, even in our band, Roman, the drummer in our band, is a prolific writer and creator of music. And all of the cats in our scene, all the young guns especially, are just like, they're cranking out so much music, and it's all incredible. And I'm old enough now that I don't feel like intimidated by that. I'm inspired by it, but I also just recognize that's not how I work. But
2 words: sail away. Randy Newman's "Sail Away." That's my, not short people, none of that stuff. Sail away. That's the song. Writing it from a perspective of the guy selling the bill of goods to Africans to get on this ship and come sail away with me to where the streets are paved with gold. That's the character he wrote it from. I thought, where did that come from?
Wow.
That's it. There's a cover song, boys. You want to have a walk around that one right there. Sail away. Anyway, never mind. I digress. Let me take me to Australia. How was the trip to Australia, the Blues Festival?
It was kind of chaotic. So I've spent a fair amount of time over there, and the first thing that I wanted to do when I got off the boat was jump in the ocean. Boat off the airplane, whatever. We were just on a boat. So we got to our hotel. We dropped our bags. Said, okay, everybody, put your trunks on. We're going swimming. We get to the beach, and it's pretty hectic surfing water. So the water is pretty intense. And I said to Dave and Roman, I said, have either of you guys swam and surf like this? And they said no. And it's like, just heads up, because like this is not swimming in a freshwater lake. Like this is an active activity. You have to keep your eyes on the water. Okay, got it. And we're in the water, we're swimming, and I look back and Roman's on his back and he's kind of getting pummeled by waves. And I said, are you okay? He's like, yeah, a wave lifted me up and I landed funny on my foot, and my foot's kind of bugging me now, so I'm just gonna lay here. I was like, you should probably get out of the water. You shouldn't just lay here. So we get him up and he can't really anyway, long story short, turns out he got lifted out of the water by a wave. He was just kind of in this perfect storm of too shallow and too deep. Deep enough that there was surf, but too shallow where you don't have like a 15-foot buffer, and he just got dropped from like 10 or 15 feet straight onto the ground and broke his ankle nearly right off of his leg. Had to have emergency surgery. So that was on Wednesday. Our first show.
You hadn't played a note.
We hadn't played a note. We'd literally been in the country for like 4 hours. Okay. So we hired a local session guy named Terry Richards, Terry Richmond, who was the drummer in the new Elvis Presley movie. It was kind of cool because Baz Luhrmann, films everything over in Australia. He sat in with us for our first gig, and then I caught something on the airplane, and I woke up the next morning, couldn't sing, had no voice. So we limped through our first show, canceled our second show, had a day off. We were supposed to go to Melbourne to do a bunch of clinics, had to cancel all that. And then luckily I woke up on the morning of the Sunday feeling a little bit better. Roman came to sound check. We were ready for the sub to play drums. Roman said, I think I can, and he broke his kick drum foot. Oh yeah. So he's like, I think I can play with my other foot. So he played the entire set with his opposite foot.
And his hi-hats closed.
With his hi-hats closed. Just absolute.
So rock and roll.
So rock and roll.
So David, that means that you have to tell the story of finally getting together with Bonnie.
Right, and so the part of why this Sunday show was so exciting was because after the whole saga of cutting the Bonnie Raitt track, this was going to be the first time that we'd seen her since 2014. And she showed up in force. I mean, the whole band was there, and she was standing stage right beside Joey, encouraging him the whole set, shouting into his ear, cheering him on. And then after the set, we just had the most joyful reunion, big hugs and hangs, and we spent basically the whole day hanging out with her, on and off, over the course of the day, sound checking back and forth and stuff. And then she had us up to sing the song that we wrote and that she covered. So she started her set with it, and we got up and we sang with her, and it was just it was so rock and roll. because the weekend felt like it was so doomed, but we redeemed ourselves in such a huge way. I mean, big part and thanks to Roman's incredible rock and roll spirit and a little help along the way. And it was just like we had so many crazy hurdles to jump over, but we did it. We got it done. And we basically were in Australia for a weekend, and it was a very eventful weekend.
Ridiculous. Okay, fine. I just had a conversation with Mariel Buckley about her deluxe edition of her Everywhere I Used to Be. A deluxe, like 2 new songs. Two new songs. Like she's a deluxe artist now, like like a Marvin Gaye re-release. 2 new songs. And we spoke glowingly of you guys, both of you. And I was delighted to hear that she would come up on stage and do When I Call Your Name.
Yeah. We love Mariel, and having her out on tour was such a blast, and we had to do something together. And the story behind that cover was we got together with Mariel to write and record a couple tunes and do like a little EP. And while we were sitting around writing, we finished one song, and we started working on another one, and it wasn't really quite coming together. And we just started sort of chatting and discovered that we all had this sort of mutual love for Vince Gill and 90s country in general. And so we sort of started messing around with one of these tunes, and I said, "Oh, have you heard the background vocals on this? When I Call Your Name?" And oh, it's so crazy! How fun would it be to do that? And we started singing it and messing around. I was like, "Well, the harmonies actually sound pretty good. We got to do this." So we did. So we recorded it for the EP, and that's sort of where, the doing it live together sort of.
You wouldn't want to release it as a single, but God forbid you wouldn't want to have that hit. We were on our last conversation. I was raving about a song on that EP, and you liked the other one. You weren't raving about the Vince Gill song. You were the other one that you guys did.
Oh yeah, right. That we actually wrote a song together for that little adventure. Goodbye, which was a song that Mariel had a chorus for, and then we cut the verses together and then arranged the song and then played it with Roman in the studio.
Yeah.
And that was one that kind of went under I think under the radar a little bit, but it's actually a really good song. I really like that one. Every time I hear it, I think, "Oh man, that's a wicked song." Joey mixed it and recorded it. No, Paul recorded it. You mixed it.
Yeah.
Okay, let me ask you about this festival. You've been coming here for quite a while.
Yeah, I think this is our 3rd appearance, and wonderful festival, beautiful chunk of the world.
Yeah.
And this year we get to share it with our family, so both of our wives and our kids are here.
And where else? You were Calgary?
I'm not doing Calgary this year. Edmonton.
Yeah, I know you're going to Edmonton. Did you go to Winnipeg?
No, we were in Aurelia for Mariposa and Saskatoon Jazz. We also do Grand Prairie, and then we go up to Churchill. And that's kind of our summer festivals.
I saw that Churchill thing. So what's the plan for Edmonton? What are you going to do? Strings?
No, rock and roll, baby. We're gonna do our brand of roots rock. We've been playing as a trio this year, last 2 years.
Yep.
And
like a ZZ Top kind of trio?
Yeah,
Absolutely.
exactly. Matching outfits, matching guitars, matching dance
steps.
Yep. Now we started playing as a trio when we came back after the pandemic. Things really started to open up. We started doing the trio thing. And it's always been my favorite format, and that's kind of where the Bros Landreth started, was as a 3-piece with Dave and I and Ryan Voth. And we had a pretty big crew on the road in 2019. We had four band people, 2 crew, and we were kind of yearning for a bit of a simpler sound and a bit of a simpler sort of return to work kind of situations, and we've just been loving it.
Have you seen the Wood Brothers do it with their trio?
Oh yeah,
we saw them. We've seen them a bunch. We've crossed paths a lot over the years. Basically, since we started touring and doing festivals, those guys have been on a lot of the same bills, and we're huge fans. But we saw them this past weekend in Mariposa. Yeah, that was last weekend.
Yeah.
At Mariposa, and they were just unbelievable. They're one of my favorite bands. I used to really love. We both used to really love Medeski, Martin, and Wood coming up as kids,
yes.
like New York acid jazz, wacky shit. But we really thrived on that stuff, and our dad played it a lot when we were coming up as kids. So I was, I've always been a huge fan of Chris Wood's bass playing
Stuff.
Yeah.
Just its thing.
Everything. Yeah. So he loved the band so much, and they were such sweet guys. They've always been really kind to us.
I also like their humor, and I like their hang. The way they hang with each other, and it's solid. Nobody's yelling. It's just they're moving as a group. I love that. Like you.
Yeah.
I'd hope so.
Yeah.
They're good dudes. They're really, really good dudes, and a great example of good people doing great music, and still being wonderful and kind. And I love seeing that. I love when the artists that you adore and look up to are also fantastic human beings. That's always really encouraging.
Much like yourself.
I should hope so.
Yeah. Now, we won't go anywhere near the fathers and the families and whether, because that's a whole other special. So, when this year is done, will we hear new music from you, or should we wait till whatever comes?
I think it's likely we won't have anything new until 24. We have a fairly busy year ahead of us still, and we've just never been super good at multitasking, so there's not a lot of writing and recording that is happening between tours and festival stuff.
Then
so.
here's the last question. You notice I don't even let you finish this. Last question is, what did you notice happened around you after the Grammy win for the song, and the press that went with it, and the mentions on the show and on the Happy Dance? What did you know? What did your little tingly senses tell you? That people were they treating you differently? Was there an uptick? What happened?
Well, I mean, locally there was a lot of pride. There was I was standing in line at the passport office, renewing our passports. Dave and I got stopped by somebody. Just, hey guys, just want to say congratulations. We're so excited for you. That kind of stuff was really cool, and in mostly in Winnipeg, I mean, and having people just sort of share in the excitement and the victory of it all. It's a pretty rare thing for Winnipeggers to be taking home Grammys, and I mean, not that it's actually our Grammy, it's Grammy adjacent. What about you, Dave? I don't want to hog all the airtime here.
No, it's so good.
Anyways, like I was saying,
interestingly, like for what it was, I think it was more of a subtle effect than maybe some of the stuff that happened earlier in our careers. Potentially, like I definitely it was a thing that was celebrated and really exciting in our community, but it felt like the most important thing was just like this real deep sense of validation that came from somebody that we literally worshipped as kids, cutting one of our tunes. Just really felt like we were brought into the fold in a way that was undeniable. And even in your hardest moments, you can still find ways to doubt yourself and to feel those shreds of imposter syndrome. But when you stack up the things that we've accomplished, it does make it a little bit harder to talk yourself in circles when you're like, at the end of the day, Bonnie,
you kind of go, yeah, Bonnie Raitt thinks we're pretty fucking cool. So
so maybe there's something going on.
Like, I think I'm an idiot, but she thinks we're pretty cool. So
yeah, I don't know. It's a really cool thing. I never would have dreamed in a million years that that'd be something that we'd have on our resume, and it's so far beyond what we could have imagined this career would give us when we were sort of dreaming about it 10 years ago.
Let's go eat.
Squeet.
I'm starving.
Sweet.
Thanks, Terry. Love you, man.
The Brothers Landreth, the pride of Winnipeg, Manitoba, now the pride of Canada, working the world, doing really well. They're going to be playing, by the way, at the Eric Clapton Crossroads Festival in Los Angeles in August. How about that? Now, and I hope to see them both and talk to them both again at the Edmonton Folk Festival. Mulligan Stew Podcast. We're halfway through. Holger Peterson and the Brothers Landreth up until now. Now an old friend, a longtime friend, who was recording his BIM when I first interviewed him, and then used his own name, Roy Forbes. and then joined me on CKUA as the host of Roy's Record Room Sunday afternoons, because he had that record room. He had stacks and stacks and stacks of 45s and 78s, heavy 78s, in milk cartons, plastic milk cartons. And one of those stacks fell on him, messed with his retinal, which was wonky to begin with, and he lost his sight. He carried on. His family helped him get Roy's Record Room done. He could talk into a microphone, and he knew the music. So anyway, it was suggested by Doug Cox, the artistic director of the Vancouver Island Music Festival, that Roy come back and do his second album called Thistles when he was named Bim. That was his nickname his mom gave him. Roy agreed to do it as long as he could have a great band with him, and he did. He put it together, did all of the tracks from his second album called Thistles. Check it out, the original. So here's a conversation with my musical neighbor, and for a number of years, my next-door neighbor, Rockin' Roy Forbes, at the Vancouver Island Music Festival, backstage. Over top of the music of Barbara Lika, sorry, Barbara, but I have a conversation that we have to do backstage with Roy Forbes, who's actually attending the Vancouver Island Music Festival as Bim.
No, I'm not.
Well, how many people have called you Bim here today?
Not as many as you might think, but a couple.
And how do you respond? I ain't doing that.
Oh, I just say hi.
Okay.
Yeah. And I say my mom called me that till the day she died. But call me Roy.
We're going to dedicate this set to her.
Let's do that to my mom.
And when did the BIM stop? What was the official stop date?
The official stop point was 1987, the Love Turns to Ice album. But the gradual stop point started, late 70s, early 80s, I guess. The posters would always say BIM, a.k.a. Roy Forbes. And it just, 87 felt like time.
I didn't think I needed to do my homework on Thistles, and then I realized there's a lot of homework on Thistles. If I remember correctly, it came out in 78?
78.
Who else was putting out records in 78? Think about that. Let's put a timestamp on it.
Well, I remember when this record came out, the first Ricky Lee Jones record came out around that time, as did the first Steve Forbert record. And I remember feeling slightly irritated because all of us had major label records, and theirs did better than mine did.
That's nice. Were you a different person then?
Oh, what a question that is. I think I was on the way to evolving to who I am now, but I guess I was. I was 24. I'm now 70, and I told my niece the other day, I'm reconnecting with my 24-year-old self. 24-year-old self. She said, "Are you getting along?"
She knows you. Here's the thing. I'm gonna send this article to you so you can understand the question. But I think it was either in the New York Times or the Guardian, a wonderful column written about Bruce Springsteen in Hyde Park last weekend or the weekend before.
Yeah.
63,000 people.
Yeah.
And at the end of 3 hours, his last song, it was the only time he talked to the audience, and he said, I don't want to do this. This is about me being a 16-year-old in a band in New Jersey.
Yeah.
And I'm realizing at 25 that I was going to do what I was going to do.
Yeah.
And he sang it. Now he's 73 years old.
Yeah.
So there's a guy, 73, singing about himself in New Jersey at the age of 25. And normally there wouldn't be relevance to it, but what he did was he brought everyone along with him on the journey.
Yeah.
That song was discovered by all of those people in the audience, and then he brought them to today. It was like a journey, which is better than trying to pretend that you're 25 for the rest of your life. Right?
You can't do that.
So are you doing much the same with your songs from Thistle from so many years ago?
I'm not pretending I'm BIM.
Right.
They are now a current part of me, and I'm loving it.
Yeah.
There was a lot of work, Terry, that I had to do to re-inhabit them,
yeah.
And in some cases rediscover them. Like High and Mighty, which was never a favorite, is now my favorite.
Wow.
So go figure. I mean, Iron Belly, I nearly wept when we played it at rehearsal the other day. It's moving to me, not only, because it's about a situation I was in 1976, but because all of that still resonates with me, and all of those songs continue to resonate with me, and even though I don't play them every night, they are all a part of me, just like my first band, the Crystal Ship from Dawson Creek. I bring that with me every night, and when I play Lydia Ann, the Crystal Ship is there right by my side.
Okay, then on this stew, the one that you're missing because you're on stage, I played about 6 songs in a row of different artists, McCartney, whatever, the Stones, just to see if how their current selves match the music that they made when they were young.
Yeah.
But the one that really changed was Joni Mitchell's "Both Sides Now," sung at the Newport Folk Festival.
Oh.
How much the lyrics of that song now reflect her life today. How about you and your songs you're going to sing tonight?
I feel I've been singing right after my heart practically every solo show since I wrote it 50 years ago. And, I'm still like most of us, I think it's a song about loss of innocence, right? I'm look at me, I'm wandering around, I'm looking all over the world. Look at me, I'm running right after my heart. And it's still that way, and in fact now I say still looking forever, whatever I sing. But it's still happening. High and Mighty helped me explain a lot of the feelings that I was having in the Thistles days about people behind the scenes, what was going on, that I had no control over, the money, the management, all that stuff. Singing that song now helps me understand a lot of that stuff and come to terms with how it affected my life, because it did not have a positive effect on my life at the time. But re-entering into High and Mighty helps me personally come to terms with it now. And I love the tune. Like, it's in the show. I'm keeping it.
So how many tracks in total? Was it 12?
10.
10, okay. What's your encore?
We're going to do Lifting My Heart, which, I wrote that for my trans son Riley when Riley was Susanna, age 4 or 5. And when I sing the song now, it's about the joys of being a father, of being a parent, about waking up from being obsessed with yourself to the involuntary love of having a child. I mean, and just the magic and amazement of being a parent and having this wonderful human being to look out for and to be proud of. And when I sing it, I get the crowd to sing with me, and I say to them, let's sing this for our children and our children's children and our children's children's children, and let's take pride in our kids and hope that we have the courage and commitment to help them become who they really are.
Will you sing Lydia?
I'll sing Lydia Ann tomorrow night.
Nice!
Yeah, Lydia Ann is a highlight of the set tomorrow at the Woodland stage. And as I said earlier, Terry, Lydia Ann was written in the spirit of Little Richard, the Beatles, Creedence Clearwater, and the Crystal Ship, my first band. So when I pull out that tune, I'm that kid, 15-year-old with my super reverb and my crummy Hagstrom guitar, trying to make some rock and roll and making some rock and roll.
Now, here's the thing. If you give this a month to digest after you've done it and it's been such a success, and you thought, I'd like to do my own version of one of my albums, would you bring one of your albums back to do again as you and somewhere, anywhere? Deep Cold, for example. And what album would it be?
Now, how do you mean reimagine it, Terry?
Well, no, just bring it back in its concept from
like
front to back.
Thistles, Roy's version?
Yeah.
If I had the money, I'd go in and I'd do it tomorrow, because I've got a great band. They put together they put all the work into it. And I would do that. I don't want to be saddled with, he's got nothing going on now, so he's doing his old album. But if I had the money and, could afford a good studio and all of that, I would, because these songs, they've reawakened for me, and they've reawakened in me, if that makes sense.
I mean, but you're one of those high-priced announcers on CKUA. You're making, vast sums of money from CKUA.
Sheesh. Yeah. Yes. Oh, yeah. No, I think I would. I don't quite have enough songs for another album yet, after Edge of Blue, but it would be a lot of fun to do it. And if I did it, I'd want to do it quickly. I wouldn't want to get all meticulous and all of that. I want to catch it, go to a sound stage and, play live, but, be able to tweak things if you needed to.
Okay,
but to get that live feeling, because that's what my records have always been about, from Kid Full of Dreams right up to Edge of Blue. When Bob Dylan did his Theme Time Radio Hour, which started around the same time I started doing Roy's Record Room, I loved it that he not only didn't play his own material, the only thing he did was, I don't know if you remember the part where he played Ruby Tuesday. No. He played Ruby Tuesday, and then he talked about the recorders, Brian Jones playing the recorders. And then he said, "Hey, I got one right here." So he picks it up and he toots a little, and he plays Blowing in the Wind. And he said, "Pretty good, eh?" But I always loved that about how Bob handled that. And he didn't overdo the making reference to, well, I know blah, 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 and I know blah, blah, blah. And I've taken that as something I want to do with Roy's Record Room. And although I do make occasional references, like if I play John Lee Hooker, I might say, well, I had the pleasure of touring with John Lee when I was 19 back in 1972. But I don't go any further than that.
Have yourself a great gig. All the
Thank
gigs,
you, Terry.
okay?
I'm so glad. I hope you can take time to have a listen tonight.
And say hello to the band for me.
Will do. All right.
He's Roy Forbes. Some people call him Bim. Some people call him Rockin' Roy. He is the host and the producer of Roy's Record Room, CKUA Radio, Sundays at 1. AV in the Inner City is our last group that we're going to talk to. We're going to talk to everybody in the group, actually. AV is Vriend, Edmonton singer, songwriter, promoter, literally, because she promotes herself. AV in the Inner City is a soul roots group that formed during COVID. And every Sunday, when the pandemic restrictions and weather would allow, AV hosted and performed nearly 60 free concerts on her front porch in the inner city neighborhood of Macaulay, often with guests, actually. Anne asked a group of singers that had been singing alongside her if they would be interested in forming an official rehearsed act. They all said yes, and thus we find ourselves backstage at the Vancouver Island Music Festival with our fourth and final interview with Vriend, AV, and the Inner City Choir. Vriend has joined me here under the blue spruce, beside the media tent, and just opposite the porta potties. Where are the porta potties? Oh, right there. Okay.
Glamorous.
Yeah. Please introduce your crew.
Sure. Well, our group is called AV in the Inner City. Can I let them individually introduce themselves?
Yes, of course.
Joaline.
What's the name of your store?
Mojo Jojo Pickles. Thank you.
I'll get to that. Jen.
Jen Dolan.
What's your store?
I'm the singing plumber.
Okay, nice. Because everybody has a second job. Your name?
Hi there, I'm Debbie Houle. I'm from northeastern Alberta, so I've been happy to be here.
Do you have a second job?
I do. I work for Alberta Indigenous Relations.
Thank you.
Hi, my name is Alenka Landell. I'm originally from the Czech Republic, now living in Edmonton. And I have a second job. I am ESL instructor. I teach newcomers English, even though English is not my first language.
Nice, well done.
My name is Crystal Ao. I am born and raised Edmonton, Alberta, and in addition to AV in the Inner City, I run a band called Mercy Funk, based out of Edmonton as well.
Thank you.
Thanks.
Thank you. Okay, I read an article, I think in the New York Times. The writer was watching Springsteen on stage in Hyde Park in London, 63,000 people. He's 73 years of age. And the discussion was about how long can that guy sing about being 25 in New Jersey, and how has he managed to jump that hurdle? Because a lot of the acts out there are simply trying to stay 25 or 26 or 27 desperately, and he's not. But he's found the heart of the matter, and that is that, yes, he wrote that when he was 25 in New Jersey, but he's lived his life to 73 and brought them along with him, and he's remembering that entire space between 25 and 73 and whatever. So I then played about 30, 40 minutes of music that you'd love in the store that was all written about those things from McCartney and Both Sides Now, Joni Mitchell at the Newport Folk Festival. Thinking about the lyrics to Both Sides Now. What do you think? What was Anne's pitch to you guys to come together and form this group? And what was the sell point?
I remember chatting with Anne and, her talking about how it was a dream come true for her to have, singers and a choir and, a full band. And just last week or last weekend, where are we? Sometime recently, we were able to play AV in the inner city with a full band, and it was just, watching Anne play with the whole band behind her, and I could really just see like dreams come true. And for me as well too, Crystal here, it's just such an awesome experience as well, just to be singing with such, powerful voices, great music, dream come true.
Anybody else? Anybody turn her down?
Hope you don't mind me sharing this, but I don't know what I'm gonna say. Well, I actually I bought one of her CDs online, and then she sent an email. Do you want to come pick it up, or I'll mail it? I'm like, I'll come pick it up because I'd love to meet you. So we started talking, and then she found out I was a plumber, and then she's like, I can give you my money back, but your money back, but my toilet is it's making this sound. So I went and I took a look at the toilet, and then we got to talking. Well, but the thing is like I feel like this is a gift because I was helping you, and then you gave this gift. Like I mentioned, I sung in a couple of choirs, and she said, choir, I need a choir, and then she said, do you want to come sing on my porch? And so I came, and then that's how it started.
One of the porch shows.
Wonderful, yeah, and then I was invited to a rehearsal.
So, Anne, what did you hear in your head? What was it that you wanted to get out?
Well, okay, so I'm a big fan of gospel and soul music, and of course it's always a congregational and there's always a choir. So, but it's expensive to have big, large bands. I've always had a very pared down company myself. I've played solo a lot, duo a lot, but I've never had the luxury of having a mini choir or a full choir, any kind of choir. But then during COVID, of course, all the touring stopped, and then I started doing these concerts on my front porch. And my porch is like long horizontally, so I could have people 2 meters apart all on the porch. And so Joanna was the first, and over time, and just more and more singers joined me on there, and they sort of got to know my songs by me performing them every Sunday, and just by being there, and they made up their own harmonies very informally, and it was so fun for me. And then when we finally got to do in 2021 smaller concerts, the rule was they had to be outside and they had to be less than 50 people. Mm-hmm. So I just thought that was a really good way to sort of see if we could take it to the next step. So I said, hey, do you guys want to actually rehearse for once and like form a real group and have like arranged, like I could write arrangements even.
Now you're getting hopes up.
Well, I was. But everybody said yes like that. So here we are.
Have you been in your store and heard your music coming in through the speakers?
I play Anne religiously in the store.
Such a good answer.
I was thinking of CK Way, but that works.
I always do. QA plays Anne. Like it's always great to like lock up and then jump in the car in the key of A often, or CKUA. I hear the tunes come up, right? She gets so many notes that are like, Anne, I just heard you here, Anne, I just heard you there. I think she's very much ours. I think that's why we all said yes. Like if you like music in Edmonton, if you hang out playing music in Edmonton, you do know who Anne is. And I've always loved her songs. Like before I met her, I loved her songs, right? It's amazing to be with her in the songs. I love that feeling of supporting her with your voice. Like musically, you can like push in with your voice. She's just magic, right? When she starts to soar, it's really thrilling to be in. It's really, a great support.
Hi, I'm TerryDavidMulligan. We were talking to Anne Vriend and friends right here, right here. I know that when you talk in terms of choir, but you're not just talking about stupefyingly contained. You're talking about joyous funk, are you not?
Yes, well, that's part of the whole experience. The people that I really look up to and the artists that I really look up to all come from that background. So, and funk and soul and R&B comes straight out of that. So,
do you do an a cappella set?
You know what? The other day we debuted a cappella-ly.
Acapellian.
We as an
acapellian version.
Yes, thank you.
What was that a cappella song you did?
It's called Dinner with the Lord. It's a song written by a friend of ours who debuted it on my front porch, actually. So tonight I'll have dinner with the Lord. Now I've been flirting around with every player in town. The more they love me, the more I get bored. And each night costs me more than my patience can afford. So tonight I'll have dinner with the Lord. I've been dancing with gin, whiskey and sin, and words I can never take back. I've spent all my life, I'm about to give up. So tonight I'll have dinner with the Lord. I'll have dinner, though I'm a sinner. But tonight I'll have dinner with the Lord. I'm dancing with gin, whiskey and sin, and words I can never take back. I spent all my luck, about to give up. So tonight I'll have dinner with the Lord. Yes, tonight I'll have dinner with the Lord. Dinner with the Lord. So tonight I'll have dinner with the Lord.
There's a lot going on in there. There's a lot going on in there.
Yes, well, it's a very great song that our friend Aline back home in Edmonton wrote.
Listen, thank you for doing this. Thank you for your time. Thank you for your voices.
Thank you so much.
Thank you,
Thank you, Terry. That was really fun.
Thank you.
I'm glad we got to sing that.
Me too. My thanks to Holger Peterson, the brothers Landreth, David and Joey, Rockin' Roy Forbes, and Anne Vriend, AV, and the Inner City. And thank you to Doug Cox, the creative director and the visionary behind the Vancouver Island Music Festival, and his media team who helped us through the humps and bumps. Thank you all. Thank you for joining us on Mulligan Stew and the Mulligan Stew podcast. Next week, reflections on Bob Dylan when he turned 80 a couple of years ago. Our guests are David Bowie, Susan Tedeschi, Derek Trucks, Robbie Robertson, Colin Linden, the Avett Brothers, Barney Bentall and Steve Dawson, and Greg Keeler from Blue Rodeo. Bob Dylan. We're going to talk about him behind his back next week on the Mulligan Stew Podcast.